have the conversations. If you are an adult child and you have aging parents, ask them what their wishes are. Find out. If you're a spouse who is a caregiver for someone who's been recently diagnosed or is living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, talk to your children if you have them. If you don't have children, whoever is your power of attorney or your friend or a brother or a sister, make sure they know what your wishes are for your spouse in case something happens to you. Because 40% of caregivers of someone with dementia pass away before the person with dementia due to the stress of it. So if that happens, how does your son or daughter or your sister or brother know where you want to put your spouse? You don't want to put that weight on them. You want to have these decisions made in advance. You don't have to act on them. Hopefully you never need them, but why not have the plan there?
Welcome back. Most people don't think about senior care until they're actually in crisis mode themselves. But what if I told you that waiting until the last minute could actually cost you time, money, peace of mind? Well, today's guest CEO and founder, Renee Allison, saw firsthand how broken the system truly was. And she left an 18-year corporate career to fix it. So we really want to dive into this great leader. I'm always just in awe of what people are doing to change the world. We know your story is so powerful, Renee, leaving an 18-year career to take that leap of faith. What was the breaking point for you when you realized corporate America just wasn't it anymore?
Well, I think it had been something that I had slowly been thinking about in the last few years of my career in corporate America. And, I had gotten to a point where I was beginning to feel burnt out. I was beginning to really think about what I wanted to do, with my life in terms of applying myself in a more meaningful way, doing something that mattered more. And, at the same time, the world was going through a lot of changes. 2020 happened, and, of course, COVID brought a lot of changes to businesses, a lot of changes to corporate America, small businesses. Everyone experienced major changes in their everyday life. And that facilitated a restructure in the company that I was working with or working for. And ultimately, it resulted in a very large restructure. And, the timing of it was a gift in a way, because it was something, I had been thinking about making a change. And when the restructure happened, it was sort of the perfect catalyst to finally take that leap and venture into the world of small business ownership. It was something that I had wanted to do for a very long time, but it's risky, and I was scared. I was scared to take that leap. But there were a lot of things I had been encountering in my personal life with my own family that really made me recognize the need for better options and more unbiased advice for families that are navigating senior living and care. And that's really what brought me to this point.
I love it because at some point we all fall into this category, right? And and what you're doing is really setting up the future for yourself as well, not just for those that have those families in this care, but also what you would like to see when you're in that space. And it's always cool that you started so early, that you've given up this 18-year career, and most people just dream of being their own boss, but you did it. They never make the leap. You made the leap. What was truly that courage that went, you know what, I'm all in. I'm betting on myself and I'm betting on this mission. What was that look like to you when you talk about courage?
Well, I did a lot of soul searching. I had thought about this for a long time, but it was not I guess knowing what's the right time to do it. What do I want to do? What do people need? And I really relied on my intuition. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, I guess, but I did, I definitely felt that the time was right. And I've always listened to my inner voice, I guess you could say. I certainly prayed about it as well. I
There you
listened
go.
to people that I trust. And, I think sometimes when you have several people telling you the same thing, there's a reason you're hearing it. And you have to open yourself up to that, to the possibilities that are there. And that's what I did. That's where the courage came from.
I love it. The knowing your worth. I always, you see it back there, but I always believe that you have to understand your value. People for so long were telling you you had the, had it in you. And it is, it takes time for you to see it within yourself. And I just recently had one of my mentors tell me, Ephraim, people teach best what they need the most. And I was teaching other people to take that leap, go do, live your dream. And I wasn't doing it on my own. And it looks like you found that moment. And I feel like it's always God's timing. You said you prayed to God. And I love that because so many times people want answers and they don't seek God. So I'm happy that you've kind of mentioned that because that's so important, especially now in this time of place that we're actually in. I want to go a little bit into statistics. I think we talked about it last time we were on the phone together, and it says by 2040, 1 in 5 Americans would actually be over 65. What does that actually mean for families, and why is this issue just bigger than most people even realize?
Yeah, I mean, so it's crazy. I mean, I think it's so in the year 2000, it was only 1 in 8 Americans who were 65 or older. And so just recently that has changed to 1 in 5. And basically by the year 2034, every baby boomer will have reached the age of 65 or older. And it's really interesting because we are approaching a time where 2034 actually is the first time in US history where we will have more people over the age of 65 than we will have under the age of 18. And so what that means is, we have an aging population, and we have a lot of people who are, you could consider them the sandwich generation. They have, like myself, they have aging parents, but they also have children that they're caring for and careers. And you may hit a time in your life where you unexpectedly are dealing with the challenges of navigating care for a parent, while at the same time having to keep up with the demands of your own life, your children, your career. And it can be a challenging and unknown time. It's stressful. You don't know where to turn. You don't know what to do. Um, and for older adults as well, they may be faced with losing a spouse and living in a large home and realizing they're starting to need more care, but maybe their children aren't nearby to help. There's so many things that need to be thought about and considered, and hopefully done so in advance so that people are not reacting in crisis mode, because oftentimes that is really what happens. It's not something that people in their free time want to say, well, let's go look at like assisted living today, or let me explore memory care. It's not something that people are necessarily anxious to do. And of course, all of these conversations, require us in a sense to face our own mortality. And that's not always a fun conversation either. But I think there's lots of misconceptions about senior living, and there are a lot of advantages to it. So we are at a time where people have a lot of care needs. There's a lot that goes along with an aging population. There are a lot of resources out there, and a lot of amazing resources. But for the average person, it's very fragmented and it's very difficult to navigate. It's especially difficult to navigate when you are in crisis mode, so to speak.
Mhm. Can you? It's funny because I was actually going to ask you this question because I remember you said it was fragmented, because you're not really reinventing the wheel. care, like you mentioned, senior care resources, they're existing currently, but can you just explain what fragmented means for those that are listening? What does that mean, and how does it actually impact families that are navigating through this journey?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that can happen when someone has a health crisis, for example, or maybe they are beginning to notice cognitive decline in a parent. There are so many steps involved with getting a diagnosis, for example, especially when you're talking about, any type of neurocognitive disorder or cognitive decline. If someone has landed in the hospital, they may realize, they've had maybe a 3-day hospital stay, and now the hospital is saying, well, now you have to go to rehab. Families are all of a sudden like, oh gosh, which rehab do I pick? Which place has a good reputation? They don't know because they've never been there. They're not sure what decision to make. And then from rehab, a discharge happens, but maybe the social worker in the rehab facility says to the family, well, now your mom is ready to leave, but she's not safe to live at home anymore. So we need a safe discharge plan for her. Well, the adult children, or perhaps the husband, is not prepared for that 9 times out of 10. So now they're scrambling. They don't know which place has a great reputation or what they can afford, what's nearby. And there's so much information coming at them. Well, you could go home with home care. Okay, great. Well, which home care company do I use? We also recommend hospice. Okay, well, what hospice should I engage with? Wouldn't it be nice for these families to have a neutral party, someone who can hold their hand from the very beginning and walk that journey with them and be on that path during, all of the decisions, but even after, to make sure that the decisions that were made were good decisions. That's where Senior Care Authority comes in. That's what I do. And there are so many times where people are sent a list of, here's places to go visit, but there's no one guiding the process, or maybe they get online to search and they put their information into a website of a particular community. They think it's the webpage for that community, but then their information gets sold to, I don't know, 50 communities in a 30-mile radius. And then those people get phone calls from an online referral agency, for, well, really, they get calls from the communities because an online referral agency sold their information to all of those communities. And they're inundated with phone calls at a stressful time. And that's overwhelming. So there are so many things that happen that the average person is not aware of as they're going through this process. But if they have someone to advocate for them and they have someone to guide the process is still going to be hard. The decisions are still going to be difficult and they're going to be emotional. But better decisions will be made that ultimately improve the quality of life for the person that needs care.
I love it. This is such a good space to be in. It's such a sweet and I'm pretty sure a sad place, ideally, but just to know what you're truly doing and how it's going to make an impact. Hell, for me, right? What it does for me when I'm at that age, or for my mom.
Right.
Mom's already. I remember recently my mom had this discussion. It's a conversation no one wants to have with their parent, but she says, "Hey, I want the family to come together," and then she just kind of talk about, "Hey, if, God forbid, I can't make my own decisions. This is how I wanted to play out. All these different things." And I just don't think that most families truly plan ahead for elder care, right? They don't think about it.
No.
And it's cool to see that my mom thought about it for herself.
That's
because
amazing.
it becomes it becomes a little harder when she can't even make those decisions. They wait until there's actually a crisis. Can you give me like 3 biggest mistakes that you realize people are actually making, and maybe how they can even avoid them?
I think I've kind of touched on one of the biggest mistakes, and that mistake is you can get online and do all the research you want. Be protective of your information, your name, your parents' name, your phone number, your email address. There's nothing wrong with doing research, but there are so many sponsored sites owned by online referral agencies And for some people, maybe that is what they want and that's a good fit. But I don't know many people who enjoy being called by 30 communities a day wanting to get a tour set up when you're dealing with, a very tight timeline of placing a loved one. It really provides, and I've seen this firsthand, it creates so much stress for the family and it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
So my advice would be you absolutely do your research, but be mindful of where you're putting your information. The second point that I would say is search out someone who does full service placement and not a referral agency.
Got
Referral
it.
agencies take your information again and they send it to communities. They give you a list of places to go, but you're not getting hands-on assistance. A full service placement agency like Senior Care Authority walks you through the entire process and provides resources to help you get to the end result that you need. So maybe those resources mean an elder law attorney. Maybe you need, to see if you can qualify for, you're a veteran who served in a wartime event, and you need to see if you can qualify for aid and attendance that can provide some additional funds if you're at a certain income level for helping to pay for assisted living. A certified senior advisor can help navigate that for you, and we do those things at Senior Care Authority day in and day out. So that's really important, and something I love about Senior Care Authority. All of the owners, there's over 100 locations in the U.S., and all of the owners are required to become certified senior advisors. We are required to become certified dementia practitioners, which means we're very well versed in all of the things that an older adult may face, and we can help the family navigate those issues, anticipate the issues that could be there, and make the right decisions, which ultimately saves families time, money, and reduces the stress involved with the process.
I love this conversation. I'm not probably close to the days that I'm there, but just to know and be educated in this space, because as you mentioned, we don't have these conversations often.
We
It
don't.
is too late. And to just have you on here and really speak to the people that are watching here, they could just, by implementing some of these strategies, some of these things that you're talking about, really change the game of what that actually looks like for their parents and for themselves. And I truly
Absolutely.
do love it.
Absolutely. And I think the third point, because you did ask me for three things, and you really just said it, it's have the conversations. If you
Mhm.
are an adult child and you have aging parents, ask them what their wishes are. Find out. If you're a spouse who is a caregiver for someone who's been recently diagnosed or is living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, talk to your children if you have them. If you don't have children, whoever is your power of attorney or your friend or a brother or a sister, make sure they know what your wishes are for your spouse in case something happens to you.
Mhm.
Because 40% of of caregivers of someone with dementia pass away before the person with dementia due to the stress of it.
Wow.
So if that happens, how does your son or daughter or your sister or brother know where you want to put your spouse? You don't want to put that weight on them. You want to have these decisions made in advance. You don't have to act on them. Hopefully, you never need them. But why not have the plan there?
I agree. I love it. Listen, I'm about to start bothering people now. I'm about to start having these conversations with just random friends. Hey, have you told your daughter? Like, I'm that guy,
Yeah.
right? Now I see there's a problem. I want to fix it with you. So just, if my friends are watching, just know I'm definitely coming
Yeah,
with those
watch
questions.
out.
I want to talk about just you go from sales to truly running your own franchise in an industry that's deeply personal. I'm a big believer the mindset is everything. You have to shift the mindset to do and take on some of these very risky but fruitful journeys, right? What was the biggest mindset shift that you actually had to make getting into this transition from sales to actually running your own business?
The biggest mind I guess the shift really came. I feel like a lot of what I did in corporate America truly did prepare me for business ownership.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for those lessons. Let me tell you, there is so much that I learned and brought with me. But I think the biggest shift is how agile you can be as a small business owner. You don't have to, yes, you should have a plan. Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
Mhm.
And that's very true. You have to have a plan. But in corporate America, you are making a big or necessary change is sort of like turning the Titanic. It's a long and slow process to get from A to B. Even when the change is necessary, it's hard for a big corporation to turn on a dime. In small business ownership, you have that ability. You can adapt quickly if you need to. So I think that it, took me a moment to recognize, like, okay, if this isn't working, like, let's shift. I mean, yes, you need to be consistent in your approach, and you
Mhm.
need to make sure that you give any plan, you give it time to see if what your strategy is working. But you also have to recognize when there's a need for a shift, and then making that shift happen. um, and that is the beauty of, I think, small business ownership, and the ability of being agile.
So when we're talking about just a small business, we know that everyone knows that if you start a business before, it is not easy. There's
No,
so many challenges that you
it's
have to
hard.
overcome. Yeah, it is. I love it though. I truly do. Because once you kind of get over that hump of, oh my God, what am I doing? And then it just clicks. And not
Yeah,
saying that you won't go back to it. It's just a roller coaster. I always say
it's a
business is a
definite
roller
roller
coaster.
coaster.
But if you could just give me that one hard lesson that you had to learn within the first year of your business,
Wow, the one hard lesson.
it wasn't even that impactful. You can't remember. Look at this. You've been doing well.
Well, there have been a lot of lessons. Let me tell you, there have been a lot of lessons. Um, you can't. I would say that you have to believe in yourself, and there are days where you will doubt what you're doing, why you're doing it, if you're going to be successful. But if you believe in yourself and you believe in your purpose, that will carry you through the tough days.
I love it.
You have
Yeah.
to hang on to that, though. And you have to be willing to also learn from those around you, having a growth mindset. It's so important.
So I even challenge you on that. I won't even say just learn from those around you. Yes, that is definitely key, but sometimes even separate from those around you a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Because especially
Yeah.
building a business, everyone has a piece of saying something. They've never been in your shoes, and now they're
Absolutely.
they're actually telling you how you should run a senior care business. And it's like, have you even talked to your mom about senior care? Like, how are you sitting here telling me these conversations, but you haven't done it? So yes, surround yourself with great people, like-minded, that may be in that career path, but also be very mindful of the people you're sharing your dreams with, because those same people can cut that dream a little short by implementing the negativity. And it's all about the mindset. So
It
if you're not
is.
in that great mindset, and you're already struggling, and then you get that negativity from others, it's hard. You wear that weight on your shoulders, I would say.
That is such a good point, and it is very true. I think that you have to have the right people in your corner for sure.
Hmm.
But I think that when I talk about the growth mindset and learning from others, I see it as learning from the people who are doing well. Obviously, what are they doing differently? What are their strengths? But also, there's a lot of lessons to be had from the people who are running things in a way that doesn't align with your values.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can learn from that. What you don't want your business to look like.
Well, then I give you this question, because you mentioned it prior in the last conversation we've had, the power of mentorship,
Yep.
right? Who were some of those key mentors in your journey, and what was that best advice you actually received from one of these mentors?
Hmm.
Putting you in the hot seats. Someone's getting called out here.
I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of mentors through 18 years in corporate America. And gosh, thinking back, and also mentors through in my family too. I mean, looking at pretty much everyone in my family has done work that is service based in some way, shape, or form. So I think that the the biggest advice, one that I got was, always having a plan. That quote I said earlier. If
Yeah,
you plan, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
which is a
That
very
was
good quote.
that was a lesson that was bestowed upon me in one of my very first positions with my former company, and it sticks with me to this day. So I think it's always important to have a vision.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. Let's talk about technology. AI just being everywhere, even in the senior care space. I think it's actually almost kind of cool of some of the things I've heard that AI is doing in the senior care space because I believe that so many people forget about those seniors.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they get become lonely. So I've heard AI tools that you can like pour stories into maybe a teddy bear or dog or maybe information that those individuals may need, right? And it would actually talk to those seniors. But how are you guys actually using AI? Like, how is technology just kind of playing in that role of what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned when we talked previously that admittedly, I am still very much learning about AI. We at Senior Care Authority have used it for, capturing notes for meetings, to generate um, social media posts to enhance consumer engagement. We have certainly used it to build, the framework for resources
Mhm.
that could be helpful for families. um, but I think there's a lot that I still personally can learn and leverage more effectively. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to just continue to grow in that area. But I think to your point, there are also a lot of new things that are being introduced with AI. As it pertains to engaging older adults or allowing them to remain independent longer through things like medication reminders or, you know, fall detection through wearable devices.
Mhm.
There's a lot that is really advantageous for them to remain independent as long as possible. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
If you could say implement AI into something that can really make a big impact, whether it's for your clients, maybe those that are putting their parents in a home, or maybe just people wanting to just inquire. If you could implement an AI into your business, what did that actually look like for you, knowing that you can actually self-serve?
Well, I think with what I do, I I don't know that I think AI has so many benefits for making business owners more effective with their time management. I think though that they're in the area where I work and in the
Mhm.
relationships that I build with people, I feel that it's really important to still have that human touch and that human
100%.
connection, and I think there are certain things, you know, businesses or, professions where that really is necessary and
Mhm.
required. I will say that I was reading an article. It's, I think, published by the National Institute on Aging. It came out in early January, and it was talking about AI, the AI speech analysis as being something that could be used to predict progression of cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's, and it had predicted it in with a 78% accuracy in the control group in this particular study. And when I think about AI in general, that is what excites me more than anything else is AI's ability to analyze and analyze people's, whether it's speech, whether it's changes in behaviors that can predict disease earlier and allow for earlier intervention. I know that there are concerns with, data privacy and, security, certainly, but those developments in AI, I think, are really exciting, and I think that would
Absolutely.
impact anyone in the senior industry.
That's amazing. And how can people connect with you and Senior Care Authority?
So, if you are in the Charleston, South Carolina area, I'm based in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and you can reach me by calling 843-233-9251. You can also go to seniorcareauthority.com and you can search for a certified senior living advisor by the city that you live in, and that will bring you to the website of the owner that owns Senior Care Authority in any given state or city. And like I said, we have over 100 locations throughout the U.S. And something else that I'd like listeners to know is that in addition to helping families navigate senior living, we are also able to help with, elder care consulting, finding the right home care, the right
Mhm.
hospice, providing peace of mind visits for families who have loved ones in a community and they're not able to visit because maybe they live on the West Coast and their mom is on the East Coast.
Yeah.
We have people that can do that for you. And we also have a fantastic program that helps older adults determine when they may need to retire from driving based on cognitive decline. It's called Beyond Driving with
Nice.
Dignity. It's a really unique program, and there's no one else in the senior space that's really offering that. That tends to be a really big hot topic for families, and it's another way that we at Senior Care Authority can help navigate the challenges of senior living and care.
I love that. I love that, and I'm hoping that we get so many people to just bombard your phone. Okay,
Thank
if you
you.
if you had to sum up your leadership philosophy in one sentence, what would that actually be?
Sum up my leadership philosophy in one sentence. Listen. I'll simplify it even more. I'll put it down to one word. Listen. You
Right.
have to listen to what people need, and it's not listening to respond. It's listening to truly understand what matters to someone and what matters to their family. And if you can do that, and you can show the person that you're working with that you've heard them, then you can help them effectively. And I believe you can apply that to business, you can apply it to relationships. But listening to what's important to someone is so pivotal. It's just, it makes all the difference. And it sounds so simple, but I don't know that everyone listens effectively.
That is true. Yeah. Listen to actually understand, not listen to. My wife tells me this all the time. Clearly, listen to understand, not listen to just what was it, argue or repeat or
Or
whatever she
respond.
says.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. It's really it's important, and people want to be heard, and if you're listening and you're hearing what's important to them, you can meet their needs, whether that's in retail, whether it's in the food industry, whether it's in senior care. It's all about understanding your clients and what they want, and you can apply that to your employees. You have to listen to what's important to them and be willing to take that information and make things better.
Well, I'm wrapping up here. We're going to ask that lovely question. I know you've been probably anticipating this question, but every leader at the end of every podcast, not only do they ask a question, but they also get to answer a blind question. So in just a bit, you'll be able to ask your blind question to the next leader. But I want to tell you what they ask. They said if you could be doing anything else. So let's say Senior Care Authority just wasn't a space, wasn't around. What would you be doing? What would be the
Hmm.
mission? Is it still the same mission?
I would say yes. I mean, there people are still around and people are still getting
Yeah,
older.
yeah.
And I have a true love for older adults. I have a love for their stories. I have a love for their experience. And I really believe I would find a way to still be in this space. Maybe it wouldn't look like this. Maybe I would, own my own assisted living facility, or, be a patient advocate. But I think I would still choose this
Yeah, I love that.
100%.
Okay, so now it's your turn. What's that one question you like to leave for the next leader coming on to the Hart and Hustle podcast?
I would say, what is their number one piece of advice for a growing business?
Ooh, I like that. I like that. All right. Guys, you guys heard that. You guys can
I'm going to
also
be
put your
tuning
answers
in to
into the
hear their
comments.
response too.
I was gonna say you could definitely put into the comments as well. I always love when you guys that are watching actually engage. So if you guys are a leader, also put that into the comments. Renee's looking for the answers. Okay, as she continues to grow, she wants to know what you guys gotta say about growth. But Renee, has been truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for this time. If you guys are still watching, make sure that you guys do subscribe, like, and check out what Renee is actually doing and the work that she's doing in her community. And really, this is just the beginning of it, because I can only imagine as she continues to grow her business with all your advice, that it goes from somewhere where it's just maybe local to now it's nationwide. So, Miss Renee, thank you so much for your time. I
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Hard and Hustle Podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one.